Yes, my name is Ajamu Nangwaya, and I'm a part of Mukasa Farms and Eco Retreat. That's our formal name, though we just for short and just refer to our project here as Mukasa. Mukasa is a sustainable organic ITAL farming project as well as an ecotourism component. Ecotourism hasn't been built out yet. It's more aspirational that we'll move towards incorporating guest house facility and development of the trail that we have here to reflect the ecotourism aspect. But the fact that we're using agroforestry or permaculture, but the particular expression of permaculture that we're using is called the food forest system. And in a very simple terms, the food forest system of farming is an attempt at mimicking the forest, where the forest is a self-regulating system that takes care of its needs. The natural forest doesn't go to the farm store to buy herbicide. It doesn't buy insecticide. It don't go and get chemical fertilizer, but yet it provides a space where soil there's a soil fertility process. There is insect protection against pests, and other things, because it has developed an ecosystem that regulate activities so that the forest will survive. So what we do in using a food forestry system is look at the various layers in a forest. Traditionally, people say there are 7 layers in a forest, but I'm now moving towards the position that there should be 10 layers in a forest. There are 7 main layers that we usually talk about. Is the canopy level, and the canopy level is those huge trees that touch the sky and blot out the sun. Those are the big trees. So if we're planting a food forest now, the mango tree, ackee tree, jackfruit in Jamaican context, Caribbean context, apple tree like Wita'iti apple can also become very tall and become a canopy tree. So those hug the skyline. And then you have sub canopy trees. So you have like your we call it soursop, those trees, orange trees, or more sub canopy, so they're below the canopy level tree, and they all serve a function in occupying different spaces. You have like the vine layer or vertical layer. So you in a natural forest, and you will see vines climbing up trees. So the beans that we have here, passion fruit that we grow here, those becomes like that layer. Then you also have the ground layer where you have vines running on the floor of the forest. All of that protects the forest, because if you have vines like here, pumpkin running, because we plant pumpkin here at Mukasa, it also suppresses weed by having the pumpkin vine running around the place. So that it has that function. But again, it shows that the space, that horizontal, that surface of the soil is occupied by plant life. But then you also have the root layer. So you grow like your yam, you grow ginger, turmeric. You also have plants that occupy that level of the forest. And the same in the forest, you have things that grow underground. In our farm or in farming, you have like beets and other things, those root crops that occupy that level. And then you have like shrubs, the shrubbery. So mulberry occupies that. Those type of trees attract birds. So you can see you provide a space for those animals to exist. So there are various levels. So when you're planning your food forest, you design it with all the different layers. in it. And also we have the herbaceous layer, and that's the layer that occupies what are our normal garden crops. So you know, cabbage, your
Callaloo,
callaloo, you grow your
herbs.
yeah, herbs, all of those things that we normally see as like garden things are cash crops. It occupies that level. So you know, there's those 7 layers, but there are 3 additional layers that some people throw in, and I will agree with them that they don't produce food, but they contribute to the production of food. So you have stones that are in your farm, big stones, boulders, little stones, or piles of stones, but they provide a space for organisms to live that contribute to soil building and the ecosystem that we have. So that is seen as a layer. Then you have a layer where you have like a standing log or stump. It's in the process of decomposing, but it also provides, as of this vertical structure, space for organisms to live. And then you have like logs falling on the forest floor, and those can help with fertilization because you have termites or other insects eating them down and contributing to the fertility of the soil. But it also provides a space for organisms to live. So we look at the forest and we say like, yeah, let's mimic the forest in creating a sustainable farming project. And that's what we use. And when you talk about the food forest, a lot of times we talk about food forests, people link it to permaculture, which the food forest system is an expression of permaculture. But we associate it with Europe, North America, because the organic farming advocates there start to look abroad at different agricultural practices, and they drew inspiration for what's going on abroad. We as Africans here in the Caribbean, we practice food forest system. We brought that with us through the Middle Passage during a period of the enslavement, and we use it. It's in decline right now because the monocultural form of farming is dominant in the Caribbean. So the similar like the plantation farming model is now being used by small farmers. So if anything, the food forest approach is on the decline. Because I remember as a child going to the countryside to visit my maternal grandmother, and around the home, that's where the food forests in the Caribbean context, all food forests tend to be around the home, similar to in the African context. That is the where we have that space. We have a wide variety of plant species growing together, looking like a forest, looking like it's a jungle, because you find beans running here, you might find chocho running there, you got peanuts growing here. It's just like it's so much to see and so much different things, and then you have all of these insects that are attracted. So you have this thriving ecosystem, plants, animals just doing their thing. That's what we're doing here, and we're advocating that as a more sustainable form of agriculture, because we're not dependent on chemical fertilizer, which has its problems, environmental problems. We're not using pesticide, which is very dangerous to human health. It negatively affects biodiversity, and it's just, it affects our health, but also affects the health of animals and the plants in the environment. So we need to move away from that. It's too destructive for us to do it. So using the food forest system is a way to mitigate it. So we talk about climate justice, or we talk about mitigating negative environmental
Food
consequences.
security.
This is what it's about. And the food forest system is also about food security, because in growing food, we're not just growing one crop to sell to the market and then get the money and buy it. We're also growing food for feed ourselves. So the food forest can operate at a field level, commercial level, and you can also create a food forest in your backyard. But we have to change our notion of beauty, of what is aesthetically pleasing to the eyes. Many of us will, we don't, we if we see a lot of leaves in our backyard decomposing, it's ugly, hideous. We want to sanitize it. It must be grass, or it must just like sanitize, no decaying leaves on the soil surface, to me, that's ugly. If I go to a farm and I don't see them, they have a lot of organic matter and mulch on top of the soil, it's hideous. There's no beauty in that. The soil is naked. It needs to be covered up in these in mulch or have humus growing on top of the soil. So this method of farming is the future. So it's like the past becoming the future because organic farming is ancient and it should displace the industrial farming model of capitalism. So in doing forestry, part of it is that we should be able to be food self-sufficient. Not just talking about food security, but most of the food that we source should come from the region. Right now, 80% of imported food in the Caribbean come from out of China, Europe, and North America. Those two regions and a big country. We're dependent on them to feed us. That shouldn't be the case. When we're doing agroforestry, we're growing a variety of food. What's interesting about even the food forests in the Caribbean, in terms of the academic literature, they have found food forests in the Caribbean where up to 80 different species of plant exist in a food forest. And so you can see it's very contrary to monocultural agriculture of capitalism, where you just have 2,000 acres of banana, corn. That's crazy. So you have to use pesticide in that type of farming. Here, this area, you could actually, as you can see, pumpkin is growing here. And this is from a previous pumpkin that we harvested from, but we didn't completely take out all the old vines. And this one remain, and it continues to bear. Right here you see a pumpkin here, and there's a pumpkin over there. I don't know if this one is going to survive because normally the blossom is intact and then it closes up when it gets pollinated, and then this is what becomes the fruit. As you see this big size fruit here. So it'll be interesting to see if this is going to hold because it's got thorn, so it doesn't close up once it gets pollinated, but it may not need us. So I will know what's going on. Also, what we've been doing recently is, as part of agroforestry and in terms of weed control, we start to plant the bananas closer together. Normally you plant 5 to 6 feet apart, but these were going like 4 feet, 4.5 feet. And the benefit of that is that it crowd out weed. And it's an established practice in the Caribbean for people who are using agroforestry or planting organic bananas. They start to plant them closer together. And that's a part of one way to control weed in like bananas that have been grown and plantings growing organically. So this area, beyond this area, in this patch between rows, we have Scotch bonnet pepper that we're growing further down. And in this area, Beryl pushed down like that tree, so it really opened up the place. When we think of hurricanes and storms, we just think of negativity. But in a natural forest, hurricane storms are good because they open up the canopy. Because what they will do is that they'll push down large canopy trees, so it opens space for younger plants to come as replacement. They will break huge limbs, and it opens up the canopy so that plants can come. But the problem is with climate change that's going on is the frequency of category 4 and category 5 hurricane becomes close. And the Caribbean, we had like a 9-year span between serious hurricane. No, it's 4.5 years between it. And they're more severe in their impact than in the past. So we can't say, oh yeah, hurricane good as nature's way of doing it. But no, because of climate change and human practices, now severe weather events are happening much closer than the huge gap of 9 years. Now we're 4.5 years in the Caribbean. So it's deadly for us. And we are not the major polluters as Caribbean territories. The imperialists regions of Europe and North America, they are the main destroyers of the environment, but we will experience the severe consequences. We have to take it very seriously, this weather events going on and the climate change, because in Jamaica, over 60% of our economic activities um, take place on coastal areas, and about 20% of Jamaicans live on coastal areas. So if we have the melting of the Arctic and you have rising sea level, it's going to affect us economically, and it's going to also affect us financially in terms of building settlements further into the country and higher ground for people to go and live, because a lot of us live on the coastal area, so it's going to affect us. So we in the Caribbean should all be environmentalists in terms of practices or advocacy, because the consequences are severe for small island states in the global south. So that's why when we're doing agroforestry, it's linked to a wide range of things, because the more trees that you have planted in an area, like in the Caribbean, it also moderate the severity or the impact, the negative impact of hurricanes and storm. When you have trees, when you have trees now, they can moderate the wind effect, and also tall trees push the wind further up, it less impact for us. So we've got to be environmentalists, commit ourselves to that. So this is an area. There are other things planted further on, but this is a developing area. So let's give you a glimpse of what we're doing and how the emerging food forests will look. And it will change, because the coconut trees that are planted in this area in 3 to 4 years are going to start to dominate the skyline, so to speak. And then we're going to see them. But right now we're seeing the other plants, like you see this bean. But you see how we grow the bean? These are stumps that we cut prune trees, but we didn't cut them way below, cut them at head level, and we use them to support for the beans that are there. This is how we do agroforestry. Because this is an area that was heavily forested. We had to cut it down. As you can see, these stumps are all around. This is how thick it was. It took a long time to move from point A to point B. Now we can move through because of the work that we put in. One of the things now, that when you're doing the food forest, don't, especially if you don't have experience in a particular area or you have no experience, you will make errors. But part of the learning and the growth process, the development process as an organic ITAL farmer, is that you're going to learn from your mistake. Like in this area, we should have cut down almost all of the canopy trees, because it's a logwood tree and we intend to raise bees in the future, and logwood blossoms make really tasteful honey. It's revered here in Jamaica, so we're saying we want to preserve it. But we planted pineapples, we planted coconut trees. They didn't do so well because they didn't have enough sunshine. And recently, actually, as a result of Hurricane Beryl, the wind pushed down a lot of the trees. So recently, a comrade came by and used his power saw and cut up it. So now we're planting hot pepper, mostly predominantly Scotch bonnet pepper, because hot pepper or Scotch bonnet pepper is going to be one of our main crops in terms of selling into the marketplace. So this area, we're using it for that. But at the same time, you have fruit trees growing, because here you have this. It definitely, it's a citric tree. I think it definitely is not a lime tree. It looks more like an orange tree, different from lemon. So we do plant oranges here, lemon, lime, and we have an orange that they call sour orange, or civil, or in Jamaica it's a civil orange. So we do have citric crops, and right now in Jamaica we actually need to plant more citric trees, orange, namely, lime, because we don't produce enough. And part of the problem, it stems from the fact that they have 2 citric diseases that we have no cure for. So we just have to use a cultural method in terms of the agricultural practices that we use to keep these diseases at bay. But Jamaica's citric industry is really being destroyed by these 2 incurable, so far incurable disease. So we are planting these things because personally I love lime in my drinks. So in the future, probably next year and a half, we'll have lime beer in here, which I'm just going to jump with joy, and probably not one is going to reach a marketplace until we have a surplus. So as I said, this area, we're now clearing and putting trees. But even as we put in like cash crop, like the Scotch bonnet pepper, like next to the Scotch bonnet pepper, about 3 feet, 3.5 feet away, we have what is called a peanut butter fruit tree. It actually tastes like the fruit tastes like a peanut butter, but the fruits are small and it has a relatively large seed. So when you eat one, it's almost like it does disappear into your mouth. But when you have like a dozen and a half and you eat it, then you get the full taste and you feel like you're filled. But when you eat just one, you're wondering, did I just taste this fruit? Because it does disappear into your mouth. So this is what we're doing. Like, so we have fruit trees integrated in this area because, as we say, it's a food forest. But a critical part of constructing the food forest is also to integrate flowers, ornamental plants into your operation. Like this is an hibiscus plant, red hibiscus, that you have a croton. These things generate blossoms, so they will attract insects, beneficial insects. They'll attract pollinators. So that is good for your farm because you want to attract these insects into your operation and on your farm, especially beneficial insects, because beneficial insects attack pests. The problem here in the Caribbean, or in Jamaica in particular, and I would say the Caribbean, we don't have enough information about what local plants, we don't have widespread information about what local plants repel certain pests. You know, the research is not there, so we're very much reliant on the information from North America about using thyme, planting parsley, and other things that can ward off pests in your operation. But we need that. We need the research. But again, most of the money get pumped into large-scale agriculture, and it's pesticide and chemical fertilizer dependent. So they're not putting research dollars into what plants attract certain insects that will also feed on pests on particular plants. And we need that badly. We need that type of investment. If they're talking about sustainable agriculture, we must do that here in the Caribbean. We cannot continue to depend on research coming out of North America because we have plants here that are not present in North America. One of the things that we do here, if we see a weed or what we consider to be a weed because we're not using it for food, and it has bright flowers, if we can avoid cutting it down or at best we just prune it if it gets in the way of the plants that we're growing, we keep it because we don't know what insect it's attracting. So we definitely see bees going there, but then we see insects that we don't know their names. There's a lot of insects here in the Caribbean, but I don't know. I'm urban based, coming into the countryside and see all these things, especially at night when you see all the insects and you're like, what the hell is this? Like, but they may have beneficial purposes to promoting sustainable agriculture, organic farming, or ITAL farming. We need to know those things. So we need investment dollars, research dollars, committed by the states, committed by foundations to find out those things. And it's important because when we talk about decolonization, it is important that intellectually we're not always dependent on the West to give us information about our survival. If anything, we share. So we can say these plants here in the Caribbean attract these particular insects and it does these things. So we have a share, but not where it's a one-way sharing of information. We look into the West for information about our survival. That type of dependency is not good because it can affect our cultural self-confidence where we don't believe we're good enough to find solutions, relevant solutions to our own development. So on multiple levels, it's important for us to do that. Here, I have a container of ashes, or North America, let's say wood ash. But ashes, these are for burning, the burning of nightly bonfire we save it up. So we have a few bags of it, but usually I go around and apply it as needed. These plants have enough ashes, because you can't apply too much because we don't want the soil to go out of balance. But I was watching a program recently where someone was saying that the amount of wood ash that we're applying to the soil, it's not going to affect the soil so much that it makes it more alkaline. So it's not, and I've always think, and I agree with the person, because I'm thinking it's just a little bit of ashes that we're using. We shouldn't fear that it's going to make it too alkaline and put it out of balance. But this is part of what we use in fertilizing our crops. And the minerals in these, especially the micronutrients which are necessary, because a lot of time we focus on phosphorus, nitrogen, and potassium. But you have micronutrients that are needed in small amounts that are needed, and they're readily present in wood ash. You'll see that this area is very stony, and some people may see that as a problem. We see it as an asset, because the leaching of minerals from the rock, especially micronutrients, go into the soil. And Jamaican farmers know that. They always say that, rocky area is good for pumpkin, it's good for hot peppers, it's good for sweet pepper. They may not know why, but over time they realize that compared to other areas, when they plant certain crops in rocky soil, they do well. But there's no mystery to that. It's the minerals inside the rock that gets leached out. When rain hits it, it collides against other stones, it releases the dust, and the soil will take care of those things. So if we treat the soil right, we don't have to become addicts to chemical. We have to become because in a sense, when we're doing ITIL farming or organic farming, we're actually functioning like soil scientists. What we need to do is to be very deliberate about what we're doing, where we know how applying ashes will affect the growth, we know what type of minerals are in the ashes. We have to become more, but again, it means that the schools will have to educate young people about organic farming, so we know precisely what we're doing when we do a particular act. So yeah, so that's what's going on in this area. And we, as soon as we plant up this area with some additional pepper seedlings, we're going to clear and go further, because our strategy is not to clear an area and then don't have sufficient labor to go immediately. Otherwise the weed going to come back. So we're going to extend our work further over planting cash crops also, because here we have hot pepper, but we also have some sweet pepper. So we may extend the pepper growing, but sweet pepper growing over into that area. So this is the plot 2, and we definitely intend to do weeding to go further, but it's part of our approach. You don't clear an area until you have the labor to immediately go in and start to prepare it for production. So here, as I say, we don't need a lot of application of wood ash. That's the fruit trees. Here's what in Jamaica we call a June plum. So this area in 5 years is going to be dominated by coconut trees. But even though we have coconut trees, like here you have a June plum tree, we call it June plum in Jamaica, a very popular plum. Over here you have a guava tree. So you're doing intercropping. It's not a mono cultural agricultural practice that we associate with industrial farming or industrial farming of capitalism. We are planting like a forest. What model of agriculture is bringing the least set of benefits to the human community? Not the conventional agriculture, the organic ITIL farming. It's the wave of the future, and this is something we have to know. We all have to play our part, because now is the time for us to start to grow backyard farms. We have to take control of our food supply from the capitalist parasites that are sucking us dry, selling us useless, nutritionally dead food, and at high prices that we can't afford it. Most of us in the global south and in the global north cannot afford an adequate diet, consisting of fresh fruits and vegetables. It's too expensive. So it means that we have to start to grow more food and also demand that the city planners and designers create urban spaces where we can grow food. When you build housing solutions, there must be farming space in the urban area and suburbs for us to grow food. We can demand that. We can build social movements to demand these types of changes. So it's not like we're going to politicians and begging them, could you please provide some gardening space for us? No, we're demanding it. We're using our social movements, we're using even their electoral system to put these demands on the table. And since they don't want the system to break, they will bend and concede to us. But of course, when we relax, they'll just come back and take these gains that we won during our movement upsurge. So we have to struggle and we have to think about the problems that are structural in nature. They're part of how the system was designed to work, and build our social movements to change those type of things. So that's what we're about. We're about food forest farming system, and we believe it serves a number of purposes.